if I told you that Jesus was a master magician who revealed a secret that was so powerful it'll change your life forever? In the secret teachings of Jesus that were banned by the church, he reveals the secret of magic, alchemy, immortality, and a secret that's so explosive the church spent centuries trying to destroy it. Jesus says that if you unlock the code of his message, that you'll become immortal and rule the universe. Think about that. Immortality. And by the end of this video, we're going to decode this secret and you'll have the answer. Now here's the thing. The miracles that we're used to hearing about, they're not what they seem at all. It's not about literally walking on water or raising the dead. Those are symbols meant to point to something a lot deeper, a secret hidden that's in plain sight. It's a secret that connects directly to alchemy, to magic, and to the ancient art of transformation, but nobody talks about this. Why? Because it places the power in your hands, not in the hands of a church, a priest, or an institution, in yours. The church has been selling you the idea of a mild-mannered shepherd, but Jesus was actually a master of magic, a rogue alchemist, spilling the kind of secrets that could get you excommunicated, burned at the stake, or, well, crucified. So to understand this secret, what we have to do is look beyond the traditional Bible and go into the Gnostic Gospels. You know, the ones conveniently left out of the Bible. Texts like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Secret Book of John. Ever heard of them? No, it's not an accident. These have been banned, hidden, and the church tried to destroy them all. But in these texts, Jesus wasn't just a savior figure. He was actually a teacher, a guide, and yes, a master magician. But not the kind of magician that you might be thinking of. This isn't like Harry Potter or a show in Las Vegas. It's not about wands and spells. It's about something a lot more real. The magic of transformation. The magic of changing yourself, and by extension, your entire reality. So think about this. What if the kingdom of heaven isn't some distant place in the clouds? What if it's not a reward waiting for you after death? What if Jesus was telling us that heaven is already here, within you and all around you, just waiting to be realized? And what if all of this was hidden in secret symbolism, encoded in a way that only those truly seeking would understand? And let's face it, the idea that you can unlock immense personal power is pretty bad news for anyone who built a career off collecting tithes. See, I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge the church doesn't want you to know, and to understand Jesus' secret here, we need to explore concepts that have been hidden in plain sight. Alchemy, magic, the merging of opposites, and the idea that reality itself is a reflection of you. See, it's all connected. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Secret Book of John, they all contain fragments of this code, but the question is, can you see it? Can you piece together the puzzle that leads to the truth? Let's find out. So let's get right into the Gospel of Thomas. This was a text so controversial it was banned and hidden for centuries, and it begins by saying, these are the hidden sayings that the living Jesus spoke. So what were those secrets? Well, the very next line says, whoever finds the meaning of these words will never die. Never die, immortality. But see, not the kind of immortality that we picture in fairy tales or movies. It's not about living forever in some distant paradise. It's about something a lot deeper, something that starts right now in this life. So how does one live forever? Well, Jesus didn't exactly write a self-help book called How to Unlock Your Inner God in 3 Easy Steps. Instead, he spoke in metaphors, parables, and riddles. Why? Because his teachings weren't meant for everyone. Not because he was trying to hide them on purpose, but because only certain people were at the level of consciousness that's needed to understand. See, that's what he meant when he said, let those with ears to hear, hear. In other words, if you don't get it, you're not ready for it. Move along. In the Gospel of Philip, it says, the Lord did everything in a mystery. Think about it. Jesus wasn't speaking to the masses here. He was speaking to those who were ready to seek, to question, to go deeper. He warned that the journey to understanding the secret would be unsettling. He said, the seeker should not stop until he finds. When he does find, he will be disturbed. And after being disturbed, he will be astonished. Then he will rule over everything. So why would he say that? Well, because that's what all great transformations do. First, they shatter the illusions that you've been clinging to, and it leaves you blinking in the rubble, thinking, am I even real? And then once the dust settles, you're in awe, realizing that what is left is more true and more beautiful than you've ever imagined. So I remember the first time that I came across the Gospel of Thomas, and it floored me. The more I read, the more I realized that, hey, this wasn't heresy, this was liberation. It was like finding a hidden map to a treasure buried deep within myself. But just like Jesus said, guess what? It was disturbing before it became astonishing. I had to confront all the beliefs I'd been taught, all the illusions that were keeping me from seeing the truth. Jesus isn't offering some comfort or sugar-coated sermons. He's straight up saying, hey, buckle up because the truth is going to wreck you before it frees you. So what could be so disturbing, so transformative, that it takes you from confusion to amazement to the point where you reign over everything. To understand this secret message of Jesus, we need to talk about magic and alchemy. Why? Well, Jesus is talking about immortality, and alchemy wasn't just about unlimited wealth, but also eternal life. You've probably heard of alchemy as the practice of turning lead into gold, right? Well, but here's the secret that most people miss. Alchemy isn't about literal gold. The alchemists believed the secret to transforming metal was to transform themselves. See, eventually turning lead into gold became a metaphor and a symbolic way of describing a much deeper process, transforming the human soul. See, magic isn't about conjuring fireballs or summoning demons. Real magic is the art and science of transformation. At its core, magic is about using will, intention, and understanding of the universe's principles to shape reality. Not in some woo-woo, wave your hands and make it happen kind of way, but through aligning your inner world with the outer. It's about mastering yourself, your mind, your emotions, your desires to create the life that you want. See, real alchemy isn't the Hollywood version with wands and potions and a Hogwarts acceptance letter. It's not about turning metal into gold for some get-rich-quick scheme. Alchemy is about you. It's about the process of turning the lead of your soul, all your doubts, fears, and limitations, into the gold of higher consciousness. But here's where it gets really interesting, because Jesus was speaking the exact same language. Jesus wasn't just some spiritual teacher, he was an alchemist. His teachings were about refining the self, uncovering the spark within, and unlocking the gold that's been hidden inside you the whole time. So to really understand this, we need to look at one of the most famous texts in the world of alchemy, known as the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus. Now, just to be clear, I'm not talking about the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. You know, the ones Billy Carson is always talking about. Yeah, those are fake. Those were totally made up by a guy named Maurice Doreal, aka Claude Doggins, in the early 1900s. So no, what I'm talking about here is the real deal. The Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus. This is real. Now, it wasn't actually written by Hermes, of course, but it is a legit ancient text. In fact, it's considered to be one of the foundational texts of Western alchemy, and it's captured minds throughout the ages. In fact, Isaac Newton was obsessed with it and even made a translation of it. And it begins with a line that's been fascinating people for centuries. As above, so below. Later, alchemists expanded this a bit to as above, so below, as within, so without. Now, this idea is central to alchemy. It's the understanding that what happens in the immaterial domain is reflected in the material world, and what happens within us is mirrored in the world around us. So think about it. If your mind is in chaos, your life probably is too. When you fix what's inside, suddenly everything outside starts to make sense. Now, compare as above, so below, as within, so without, to Jesus' words in the banned Gnostic Gospels. In the Gospel of Philip, he says, I came to make the things below like the things above, and the things outside like those inside. I came to unite them. Pretty damn close, right? I mean, isn't that crazy? Jesus wasn't just giving some vague spiritual advice here. He was laying out the foundation of a magical process. And get this, some historians believe the Emerald Tablet was written somewhere between the 6th and 8th centuries CE. But the Gnostic Gospels? Well, they were likely written around the 2nd and 4th century CE, meaning they're probably older than the Emerald Tablet. In other words, Jesus was the OG alchemist out here doing it before it was cool. So what does this mean? Why did Jesus and the alchemists focus so much on uniting opposites? Well, it's because we as individuals are fragmented. We're divided within ourselves. Think about it. Rational versus emotional, spiritual versus physical, masculine versus feminine. These divisions keep us from reaching our full potential. The process of alchemy, like the teachings of Jesus, is about alignment. It's about taking these seemingly opposite forces and bringing them into harmony. It's about creating a balance that unlocks a higher state of being. So this isn't some lofty idea, it's a roadmap for real transformation. In alchemy, this is symbolized by the transformation of lead into gold. But what is lead? It's the base, unrefined version of ourselves. It's our fears, our doubts, our ego-driven impulses. Gold, on the other hand, represents our highest self, our divine eternal essence. And Jesus was showing us how to make that transformation. He said, when you know yourselves, you will be known, and you will realize that you are the sons of the living Father. In other words, when you refine yourself, when you strip away the lead of your lower nature, you uncover the gold of your divine identity. And so here's another thing about as above, so below. It's not just about the world outside, it's about you, what's happening inside of you. The thoughts, emotions, and beliefs that you hold, they shape the reality you experience. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within you and outside of you. That's a direct reflection of that alchemical truth. Your inner world and outer world are mirrors of each other. If you change what's within, you can change what's without. That's the real magic here. Aleister Crowley, one of the most famous occultists of the modern era, said this. He defined magic as the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. And here's the part most people miss. The change starts within you. It's about transforming your own psyche so the world naturally shifts in response. Jesus wasn't teaching people how to wave wands or chant spells. He was teaching the principles of real magic, the alchemical process of transforming yourself. When he said the kingdom of heaven is within you, he meant that the key to changing your reality isn't out there somewhere, it's inside. Now, to really understand this, we need to talk about the four elements: fire, water, air, and earth. See, an important first step of magic is about learning how to master the four elements. I mean, does that sound kind of crazy? Well, guess what? These elements aren't about literal fire or actual dirt. They're symbolic. They represent archetypal forces within your mind. For example, if you've ever been burned by your own bad decisions or felt like you were drowning in your emotions, well, congratulations, you've already had a crash course in elemental alchemy. See, here's the breakdown. Fire represents willpower, drive, transformation, and desire. It's the force that pushes you forward or sets your life on fire if it gets out of control. Water symbolizes emotions and intuition. When it's balanced, it's your flow, your creativity, but when it's unbalanced, it's a flood of overwhelming emotions. Now, air, that's your intellect, your ability to think and analyze, and it's all about clarity, but it can also lead to endless overanalyzing and spiraling into anxiety and existential dread. Earth represents groundedness, stability, and manifestation. It's the part of you that gets things done, or the part that gets stuck in the mud, trapped in an endless cycle if you cling to the material world too hard. So you see, mastering the elements isn't about throwing fireballs or summoning storms. It'd be kind of cool if it was, but it's not. It's about mastering yourself. See, when you learn how to balance these forces within, you stop reacting to life like a chaotic weather system and start creating like an alchemist. So this is not just some esoteric mumbo jumbo. The four elements are archetypes of the mind, and learning to balance them is key to transformation. Jesus understood this, which is why his teachings are filled with imagery of fire, water, and earth. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, "I have thrown fire on the world, and look, I watch it until it blazes." So this wasn't a call to commit arson. It was a metaphor for burning away the old so that the new can rise like a phoenix. Jesus also said, "Whoever is near to me is near the fire." See, this is the first step in alchemy, called calcination, purification by fire. But here's the problem. Most of us let these elements control us instead of the other way around. Your emotions, water, take over and you're drowning. Your willpower, fire, burns too bright and you get burnout. Your intellect, air, can spiral into overthinking and suddenly you're frozen in place. The work of alchemy, of magic, and the work of Jesus is to reverse this process. Instead of being a victim of these forces, you become their master. So let's talk about Jesus walking on water. This is a story that's so famous, it's practically a Christian meme at this point. But instead of it taking it as a literal miracle, let's dive deeper into the meaning here. Because let's be honest, the idea of a guy casually strolling across a stormy sea is a little hard to swallow, don't you think? And frankly, it's missing the point entirely. These stories are symbolic, not some first century Marvel movie. In symbolic terms, water represents intuition, emotions, the unconscious mind. And when things get turbulent and stormy, you can feel like you're drowning. So when Jesus walks on water during a violent storm while everyone else is losing their minds, he's showing us what it means to master this element. The disciples, who were afraid of drowning, symbolize how most of us react to the storms of life. Jesus, however, rises above the chaos. Literally, he demonstrates that when you master yourself, you can navigate even the most turbulent waters with calm and clarity. And then, as if walking on water wasn't enough, he calms the storm. Again, not because he's trying to impress his audience, but to drive the point home. Mastery of your inner emotional and unconscious storms allows you to bring peace to the chaos, both inside and out. Now, doesn't that make a lot more sense than a literal miracle? This story is not about physics, it's about psychology, transformation, and spiritual growth. Before we go further, have you liked and subscribed? Do it now. and help spread this knowledge around. The world needs it right now. And if you want to go even deeper, become a member of this channel to access exclusive videos, downloads, and my personal lecture notes on alchemy. You'll also find links to my books in the description, including Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind, which is all about transforming your consciousness. So why does any of this matter? Because when you balance these elements, you step into your power. You become the alchemist of your own life. You become a master magician. Have you ever looked at the Magician Tarot card? The wand, dagger, cup, and pentacle on the table represent fire, air, water, and earth. The magician is the master of the elements, of willpower, intellect, emotions, and intuition and manifestation. And this is exactly what Jesus was teaching. How to harness these inner forces to transform yourself and the world around you. As above, so below, as within, so without. Change yourself and you change the world. It's all right there. Jesus was saying the exact same thing that modern magic teaches now and alchemy would teach centuries later. How has no one connected the dots here? Well, because the church didn't want you to. Jesus was dangerous. To the establishment, at least. He was a revolutionary. He was a magician. See, the stories in the Bible, they're not literal. They're symbolic. So, for example, think about when Jesus turned water into wine. He wasn't a party magician or some divine bartender. Like the metaphor of turning lead into gold, turning water into wine is about spiritual transformation, reaching higher states of consciousness. Now, doesn't that make a lot more sense? Don't believe me? Later, Jesus says, new wine cannot be put into old wineskins. Now, do you really think this is some kind of bartender tip here? Of course not. He's saying that higher consciousness, represented by the new wine, can't fit into an outdated mindset, the old wineskins. In other words, you can't pour divine wisdom into a vessel that's still clinging to ignorance and limitation. It'll burst. Now think about the crucifixion. It isn't just about physical suffering, it's the ultimate symbol of destroying the old self. The part of you clinging to fear and outdated beliefs, that's the part being nailed to the cross. It's painful, but necessary, because without the death of the old, there can be no birth of the new. And that's where the resurrection comes in. Rising from the tomb isn't about a literal body reanimating, it's about the emergence of the transformed self. It's the phoenix rising from the ashes, the culmination of the alchemical process. Jesus is showing that true transformation requires letting go of what doesn't serve us so we can step into our true divine power. This isn't just Jesus' story, it's our story. Every time you face a challenge that forces you to shed your old ways and embrace something new, you're living this cycle. You're crucifying the outdated and resurrecting the transcendent. But there's more to it than this. See, in alchemy, one of the most powerful ideas is called conjunction. While mastering the four elements is about balance, conjunction is about becoming whole through the unification of opposites, the masculine and feminine, the inner and outer, the spiritual and material. And guess what? Jesus says the exact same thing. In the Gospel of Thomas, he said, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the upper like the lower, and the lower like the upper, and thus make the male and the female the same, so that the male isn't male and the female isn't female, then you will enter the kingdom. Pretty damn cool, right? Now, what is this two that he's talking about here? Well, this two that are to be united, they're inside you. And this brings us to one of the most misunderstood metaphors in Gnostic texts, the bridal chamber. So no, this isn't some ancient version of The Bachelor. In the Gospel of Philip, the bridal chamber is talked about repeatedly, again and again, but it's not about a literal marriage. It's a metaphor for uniting your inner opposites, the masculine and feminine energies within you. Let's break it down. The bridal chamber, it's not a place, it's a state of consciousness. It's where your divided self comes together, where the chaos of duality transforms into harmony of unity. In alchemical terms, this is known as conjunction, the uniting of opposites to create something new. Now, let's be clear here. This isn't about literal gender or physical relationships. It's about uniting the qualities we associate with these energies, such as reason and intuition, assertiveness and receptivity. When these forces come together, they create something new, a higher, more complete version of yourself. This is alchemy in action, integrating all parts of yourself to unlock your full potential. Now, let's talk about one of the most controversial and misunderstood moments in the Gnostic texts, the part where Jesus kisses Mary. Yeah, you heard that right. In the Gospel of Philip, it says Jesus loved Mary more than all the disciples and used to kiss her often on her mouth. And this isn't just some ancient tabloid drama here. This isn't about romance or scandal. It's about something a lot deeper. See, it's symbolic. That kiss represents the union of the divine masculine and feminine, a theme that's all the way through alchemy and spiritual transformation. See, Mary represents the divine feminine, intuition, wisdom, and nurturing. Jesus, on the other hand, represents the divine masculine, will, reason, and action. Their connection, symbolized by the kiss, is a powerful metaphor for inner alchemy where the opposites within you merge to create spiritual wholeness. So think about it this way. If you're ruled only by logic, well, you're disconnected from your intuition. And if you're ruled solely by emotion, well, you probably lack stability and clarity. But when you align all these aspects of yourself, when you unite the divided pieces, you access a power that most people can only dream of. And that's what Jesus was teaching. He was showing us the path to divine transformation. He was showing us how to become alchemists of our own souls. So no, the bridal chamber isn't about Jesus putting on some ancient speed dating event. It's about merging the parts of you that have been arguing since the dawn of time. Think of it like cosmic couples therapy for the opposites within you. See, when I started learning about alchemy, I had no idea that it would tie back to Jesus. I used to think it was some ancient practice about turning metal into gold, but then I saw they were talking about spiritual transformation. And when I read Jesus's words about making the inside like the outside and uniting the opposites within, I realized he was describing the same thing, alchemy, plain as day. You've probably heard that alchemy was the precursor to modern chemistry, right? Well, what they don't tell you is that alchemy was actually also the precursor to psychology. For the alchemists, mind and matter weren't separate. They were two sides of the same coin, and they believed that transforming the outer world, turning lead into gold, was symbolic for transforming the inner world. And this idea didn't die with the alchemists. Carl Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of all time, studied alchemy extensively. Jung believed that alchemy's metaphors and symbols were a map of the human psyche, showing how we can integrate the divided pieces of ourselves to become whole. So when you hear phrases like as within, so without, it's not just spiritual woo-woo fluff, it's psychology. Carl Jung said, "Only by discovering alchemy have I clearly understood that the unconscious is a process, and its contents initiate an evolution, more precisely, a real metamorphosis of the psyche." See, Carl Jung believed a huge part of psychological development was about uniting our inner masculine and feminine energies. He called them the anima and animus. And here's the crazy part. Jesus was teaching this way before Jung came along. In a way, Jesus was the original psychologist. When he talked about uniting opposites, making the inside like the outside, the male like the female, he was describing the same process that the alchemists called conjunction, and Jung later called integration and individuation. Jesus was showing us how to align the conscious and unconscious parts of ourselves to access a higher state of being. But here's where it gets crazy, because Jesus and magic go even further than just personal transformation. It's cosmic. It's about understanding that every division, inner and outer, spiritual and material, is an illusion. In other words, it's a blueprint for dismantling the false divisions in yourself and the world around you. When you stop seeing opposites as enemies and start seeing them as complementary, it's not just about changing yourself, you change reality. When you step into the bridal chamber, you don't just unite yourself, you realize that everything is already one. And guess what? Both the Emerald Tablet and Jesus talk about reality being one, emerging from a single ultimate source called, you guessed it, the One. The Emerald Tablet says, all things have come from this one thing. All created things originate from this one thing. Now compare this to the Secret Book of John, where Jesus says, the One rules all. Nothing has authority over it. Everything exists within it. It is not right to think of it as a God or as like God. It is more than just God. So what is this one? It's the source, the unity that underlies everything. And Jesus was telling us that we're a part of it, that we have the power to align ourselves with it, and in doing so, transform our lives. This is why the teachings of Jesus and the secrets of alchemy are so intertwined. They're both about realizing the potential within you. They're about taking the raw material of your existence, the lead, and refining it until you shine like gold. This is the magic that Jesus was revealing. It's not about supernatural powers like in the movie. It's actually more powerful than that. It's about the ability to transform yourself and your entire reality. See, what Jesus was saying is that we're God. Western religion is about worshiping God and getting to heaven. Eastern religion is usually about escaping reality, whereas magic is about becoming God and mastering reality. That's why Jesus says when you understand the secret, you will reign over everything. Remember when he said, the One rules all? Jesus wasn't pointing to some external God sitting on a cosmic throne, judging your every move, and he wasn't handing out tickets to an exclusive afterlife club. No, he was holding up a mirror and saying, hey, the divine spark you're looking for, It's in here. The Gospel of Philip says that when you understand this, you are no longer a Christian, but a Christ. And you saw the Spirit, you became Spirit. You saw Christ, you became Christ. You saw the Father, you shall become Father. And in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says when you understand what he is saying, you will become like I am. There are a lot more verses that I could show you and go on, but I think you get the idea here. This isn't about worshiping someone else's divinity. It's about realizing your own. And speaking of that, have you ever thought about how weird the concept of heaven is? Think about it. Hell exists to terrify you, to make you obey out of fear, but heaven is supposed to be the ultimate reward when you die. But what is that reward? Eternal worship. Forever. Kneeling, singing, plucking harp strings, endless devotion to a jealous God who demands praise all the time. Is that divine? It sounds like manipulation. Can you really blame Satan for rebelling? I know I would. Even Friedrich Nietzsche said, I cannot believe in a God who wants to be praised all the time. Have you ever thought about how weird that is? If you were God, would you want people praising you all the time for all eternity? The truth is that the church twisted the idea of heaven. Growing up, the idea of heaven was always dangled like a carrot. Be good, follow the rules, and hey, just maybe you'll get in. And I remember thinking, well, that's it? That's the eternal reward? Eternal worship of a jealous God? It never really felt right. But Jesus never described heaven like this. Jesus wasn't pointing out some celestial afterlife where you get to play a harp for eternity. One of the most radical and shocking truths that Jesus revealed is that heaven is not a place. It's not some celestial city waiting for you after you die. It's not in the sky. It's not in some distant paradise. Heaven is a state of consciousness. Now really let that sink in for a moment. Think about it. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says, if your leaders say to you, look, the kingdom is in the sky, then the birds will be there before you. If they say that the kingdom is in the sea, then the fish will be there before you. Rather, the kingdom is within you and it is outside of you. Now, if that is not clear enough, his disciples ask, when is the kingdom coming? And Jesus says, it is not coming in an easily observable manner. People will not be saying, look, it's over there, or look, it's over there. Rather, the kingdom of the Father is already spread out on the earth and people aren't aware of it. How much clearer can you get? And guess what? He says the exact same thing in the Bible. In Luke 17:20, Jesus says, the kingdom of God can't be detected by visible signs. You won't be able to say, here it is, or it's over there, for the kingdom of God is already among you. I mean, hello? You can't get more clear. Heaven isn't somewhere you go. It's a state of mind. It's something you create. And here's the part that shakes everything to its core. It puts the power in your hands. That's why the church doesn't like it, because it's not in the hands of the church, not in the hands of priests or religious leaders, but in your hands. Now, this is not what most of us were taught in Sunday school. So, if heaven is a state of consciousness, the question is, how do you reach it? Well, Jesus gave us a pretty clear roadmap, but it's hidden in metaphors, symbols, and teachings that most people overlook. Jesus said, recognize what is right in front of you, and what is hidden will be revealed. Nothing hidden will fail to be displayed. Jesus is literally saying, hello, wake up. What you're looking for, it's right here. The divine spark you've been searching for, the key to heaven, it's inside you. But to access it, you have to align your mind, body, and soul. You have to transform yourself. And that's where the real work begins. And that's a lot harder than putting your hands together and praying to an imaginary being in the sky or reading some book every Sunday. But here's the part that might disturb you. Because Jesus said it would, remember? When you start this process, it's not easy. The journey to align your mind, body, and soul means facing the shadows within you, your own inner demons. It means looking at the parts of yourself you've been taught to suppress, deny, and ignore. That's why he said the seeker will be disturbed. It's uncomfortable to see yourself clearly. But on the other side of that discomfort is something extraordinary. Astonishment, enlightenment, a realization that you're more than you ever imagined. So what does this really mean for you? It means that you have the power to create heaven right now. Right here. It's not about waiting for some afterlife. It's about transforming your consciousness, merging your inner opposites, and realizing the divine potential that's been hidden in you this whole time. Jesus didn't just teach us how to find God, he taught us how to become God, and that is the ultimate secret of heaven. Let's be honest, the world we live in right now, it's fucked up. It's chaotic, divided, drowning in fear and doubt. Social media is turned into a digital train wreck. The news is a 24/7 anxiety machine. It's no wonder so many people feel powerless. But what if the power to rise above all this was already within? What if instead of being tossed around by the chaos, the stormy weather, you could align yourself, align your inner world, and become the calm in the storm? That's the transformation Jesus was pointing to. Think about it. How many of us spend our lives searching for answers out there somewhere? In religion, in relationships, in self-help books written by people who can barely help themselves. The truth is, no external source is going to save you. The answers have always been within you, but people are too busy looking at the horizon to notice, as Jesus would say, what's right in front of you. Now imagine what would happen if more people realized this. If instead of blaming the world, they transformed themselves. The ripple effect would be unstoppable. The chaos wouldn't stand a chance. So here's the question. Are you ready to step into your power? Are you ready to stop searching and start becoming? The world isn't going to fix itself, but guess what you can do? You can fix yourself. And when you do, the world will follow. So why did Jesus say that understanding his secret teachings would make you immortal? Because once you realize you are divine, you understand that death is the ultimate illusion. Immortality isn't about drinking some magical potion or uploading your consciousness to the cloud. It's about knowing you've been eternal this whole time. See, you're not just a body, you're a soul, a mind, a spark of the divine itself. And Jesus wasn't asking you to believe in him. He was asking you, or challenging you, to become like him. He said, if you know yourselves, then you will be known and you will realize you are the sons of the living Father. For the longest time, I thought I had to worship Jesus, obey him, and put him on some kind of pedestal. But then I realized he wasn't asking for followers. He was teaching us how to become divine. And that's when everything clicked for me. It wasn't about following rules to avoid hell or get to heaven. It was about becoming my true self, aligning with my own divine spark and transforming my reality from the inside out. And that's the real miracle. Not walking on water or raising the dead, but stepping into the power we've always had within us. And that's the greatest secret of magic. You are the magic. You are the alchemist. You are God, the one with the power to transform your life and your world and your reality. The divine isn't something outside of you, sitting on a cloud, or waiting to judge you. The divine is in you and around you, and it's always been that way. And the church, the institutions, the gatekeepers, they don't want you to know this. Why? Well, because an empowered individual doesn't kneel. The moment that people realize that they can connect with the divine directly, the collection plates stop filling up. You are the temple, the altar, the priest, and the God, all rolled into one. Think about it. Are these stories literally true? Did Jesus actually walk on water, turn water into wine, or rise from the dead? Of course not. We don't even know for certain if Jesus himself actually existed. Personally, I believe that he likely did, but ultimately it doesn't matter. What does matter is the impact these stories have on our psyche. They've been embedded in our collective consciousness for thousands of years, shaping how we think, feel, and view the world. The problem is that these stories have been used by the church not as tools for enlightenment, but for control. But when you strip away all the bullshit dogma and look at these stories for what they truly are, symbols of transformation, well, then they stop being chains and start becoming keys. It's not about controlling the psyche. It wasn't supposed to be. It's about liberating it. It's about realizing that the divine isn't some external force you need permission to access. It's inside you. Once you understand that, the stories stop being about Jesus and start being about you. And that's the real miracle. So what's stopping you? Are you ready to actually step into your divine power? To stop looking outward and start looking within? Let me know in the comments. What part of this resonated with you, and how are you going to begin your transformation? But that's not all the church is hiding. What if I told you that the God of the Bible is actually the devil, and that Jesus came from a completely different God? Watch my video, God is actually the devil. It'll change the way you see everything.